The courtroom buzzed with hushed murmurs as people filled the wooden benches, papers rustled, and lawyers in polished suits whispered in corners. At the back, a woman in a modest, dark blue cleaning uniform stepped in silently. She wore no makeup, carried no bag, just a small leather-bound notebook in her hand. Her name was Amina Clark, and though she looked like she belonged to the janitorial staff, her eyes scanned the room with calculated awareness. Most didn't notice her enter. Those who did gave her passing glances before looking away. She walked to the back bench and sat quietly, her posture calm but alert. The trial was already in session. On the stand was Jordan Pierce, a white businessman accused of embezzlement and laundering millions through shell corporations. He wore a tailored suit and a smug smile. His lawyer, slick, confident, and clearly well paid, spoke with persuasive ease. His tone was casual, cocky, and manipulative. The judge presiding over the case was Ronald Keyes, an aging white man with a reputation for being condescending, especially toward defendants of color. He rarely allowed disruptions and treated his courtroom like his personal kingdom. Amina watched as he smirked during the defense's arguments, occasionally exchanging amused glances with the lawyer. The prosecutor, young and overwhelmed, fumbled through paperwork. Evidence was poorly presented, timelines were messy. It was clear the defense was controlling the narrative. Amina's eyes never blinked for long. Her attention followed every word, every smirk, every misstep in the testimony. At one point, she pulled out a pen and wrote something into her notebook. Judge Keyes noticed her scribbling in the back and squinted. He tapped his gavel lightly. "Excuse me," he called out, pointing toward her. "You there, in the back. This courtroom is for authorized personnel only. Cleaning crew should wait outside." A few people chuckled under their breath. Amina stood calmly. "I am here in official capacity, Your Honor." The judge raised an eyebrow, the smirk forming again. "Oh, what agency sends their officials in scrub uniforms now? Homeland Housekeeping?" More laughter followed from the defense side. Amina said nothing. She didn't smile, didn't flinch. "You've made your point. Kindly exit, miss." He gestured for her to say her name, but she didn't. "I request permission to speak," Amina said evenly. "You request?" He chuckled. "This court is for professionals, not help." A hush fell over part of the room, as some shifted uncomfortably at his words. Amina's expression remained unreadable. She glanced toward the prosecutor, who looked confused but intrigued. She made no move to leave. The judge leaned forward, irritated now. "Unless you have some business here besides watching, you are hereby dismissed. You're just a maid. Now clear the space for actual witnesses." And just like that, her request was denied, her presence ignored, her identity erased. But she didn't argue. She sat back down quietly. Only her eyes revealed the truth. Sharp, calculating, unwavering. The courtroom thought it had just brushed off another bystander, but they had just dismissed a storm. The walls of their one-bedroom apartment in East St. Louis were thin, stained, and always cold in winter. Amina remembered the rattle of the pipes at night, the echo of sirens outside the window, and the soft hum of her mother singing old gospel songs while scrubbing floors on her knees. Her mother, Lila Clark, never complained. Not about the aching bones, not about the long bus rides between houses she cleaned, and not about the weight of raising a child alone. Amina learned early how the world looked at women like her mother, black, poor, unseen. She saw how people talked over her mother, walked past her like furniture. But in Lila's quiet resolve, Amina also saw something sacred. Power didn't always shout. Sometimes it scrubbed baseboards and still stood tall. She spent her nights reading library books by dim light, always choosing the ones others ignored. Foreign languages, spy novels, history texts. Her mind wandered beyond the cracked sidewalks and peeling walls. She didn't want to escape her neighborhood. She wanted to outgrow the box it was placed in. By 17, Amina enlisted in the army. She wanted structure, discipline, a path. Boot camp tried to break her, but it only shaped her. She became fluent in Arabic and French within 2 years. Her commanding officer noticed her ability to blend in, to listen without being noticed, to read between the lines. After her deployment overseas, she returned with a Bronze Star and a sharper sense of who she was becoming. Instead of stopping, she pivoted. Using her GI Bill, she studied linguistics and international law at Georgetown. Professors were startled by how she connected culture, code, and silence. She saw patterns others didn't. She interned with the State Department, but quietly caught the attention of someone else. One rainy evening, after a speech on disinformation warfare, she was approached by a tall woman in a charcoal suit who asked if they could chat privately. That conversation lasted 5 hours. Within 2 months, she was quietly recruited into a division of the CIA known for counter-surveillance and covert domestic operations. They called her Ghost Wire. She didn't need weapons, just information. Her specialty was becoming invisible, learning how to step into a room and be dismissed, ignored, or underestimated. That was where her power lived. She worked assignments that never made the news, dismantling foreign networks buried inside tech companies, exposing bribery channels within clean charities. She learned to move in silence, to wear anything, be anyone, and in every case file, every mission, she remembered her mother's words. They might not see you, baby, but you see them. And that's enough to change the game. Amina never forgot where she came from. And even in courtrooms filled with polished shoes and raised eyebrows, she still carried East St. Louis in her blood, quiet, strong, and ready. She had become everything the world never expected from just a maid. And now, the trial she sat in wasn't an accident. It was personal. The courtroom buzzed with restrained tension as the trial resumed after a short recess. Jordan Pierce sat at the defense table with the same arrogant grin plastered across his face, legs crossed, fingers tapping rhythmically against the polished wood. His suit was pristine, his cufflinks glinted under the lights, and his confidence filled the room like a fog. Beside him, his lawyers leaned back in their chairs, smug and unhurried, as if they already knew the outcome. One of them, a sharp-jawed man named Craig Halpin, casually flipped through a folder, pausing now and then to smirk at the prosecution. Across the aisle, the young assistant district attorney shuffled papers frantically. His name was Alan Rivers, fresh-faced, intelligent, but visibly outmatched. He'd only been assigned this case 2 weeks ago after the original prosecutor mysteriously withdrew. And now, standing before Judge Ronald Keyes, Rivers looked like a freshman trying to argue against tenured professors. "Objection, Your Honor. The document presented by the defense was not submitted during discovery," Rivers said, his voice shaking slightly. Judge Keyes didn't even look up from his bench. "Overruled. Proceed." Rivers blinked. The defense grinned wider. Amina sat silently in the back row, her hands folded in her lap. Her face was unreadable, but her mind was a storm of calculations. Every word, every document shown, every name mentioned, she tracked it all. She leaned forward slightly as the defense presented a set of financial reports they claimed exonerated Jordan. They argued that the missing funds were the result of overseas investments gone awry, blaming it on foreign partners and bad luck. But then, something shifted. One of the defense attorneys mentioned a shell company by name, Orion Alliance Holdings. It was buried deep in the paperwork, just a passing reference. But for Amina, it lit up like a flare in the dark. Orion Alliance? She hadn't heard that name in 3 years. It was a ghost company, once used in a covert CIA op to trace foreign money funneled into extremist tech startups. That operation had been shut down quietly, its trail wiped clean and compartmentalized. The name shouldn't even exist in a courtroom, much less in a corporate defense. Her heartbeat quickened. She pulled her notebook from her bag and quickly jotted a line, drawing an arrow next to the name. Then she tore out the page, folded it once, and stood up slowly. "Sit down, Mum," the bailiff said, approaching her. "I need to deliver this to the prosecutor," she said calmly. The judge noticed the movement and sighed, glaring over his glasses. "You again? What did I say earlier? This courtroom is not a stage for personal theatrics." "It's not theatrics, it's evidence," Amina said, holding the note. The judge banged his gavel. "Bailiff, remove her if she stands again without permission. This is not a playground. You are not a lawyer. You have no standing." The bailiff hesitated, unsure. The audience whispered, sensing something unusual. Amina locked eyes with the prosecutor, and for a split second he looked at her. Not with suspicion, but curiosity. He didn't know why he trusted her instinctively. Maybe it was something in her eyes. Or maybe it was the desperation of a man drowning. She sat back down, quietly folding the note into her lap. But the damage was already done. She had seen the trail, and now she knew. Jordan wasn't just guilty of theft. He was involved in something much, much deeper. And if Orion Alliance was on record, it meant someone either leaked classified intel, or someone was about to make it disappear. Either way, she couldn't stay quiet much longer. The courtroom emptied for lunch, and people filed out in scattered groups, some heading to the courthouse cafe, others taking calls in hushed tones. Amina didn't follow them. She waited near the hallway outside the judge's chambers, the soft hum of vending machines buzzing nearby. Her face remained still, her back straight, the sealed envelope tucked under one arm like it weighed nothing, though it could easily shift the balance of the entire trial. Alan Rivers, the assistant district attorney, exited the courtroom with slumped shoulders, his face pale with pressure. He paused by a water fountain, gulped once, then pulled out his phone. He didn't notice her at first. "Mr. Rivers," she said gently, her voice like a firm knock on a locked door. He turned, blinking. "Oh, it's you. From the gallery." He looked nervous again. "Look, I appreciate your interest, but I can't." "I know you're overwhelmed," she interrupted, stepping closer. "But if you want to win this case and keep your job, you'll want to read what's inside this envelope." He frowned, arms crossed. "Mum, unless you're part of the defense, prosecution, or court." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a badge. Not just a federal ID, but one encased in a black leather folder, sealed with a silver CIA insignia. Rivers froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. "You're not a maid," he finally whispered. "No," Amina said, handing him the envelope. "I clean messes of a different kind." He opened it carefully, scanning the documents inside. Bank transfers, alias reports, redacted witness testimony, offshore transaction trails, satellite photographs. A classified surveillance log dated 6 months prior. Jordan's name appeared in at least 3 separate intelligence flags. What is this?" he asked. "It's your case," she replied. "The real case." Alan looked up. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" "I tried. The judge silenced me. He thinks this is just about corporate fraud. But Jordan Pierce is laundering money for a trafficking network with foreign political ties. He's not just stealing, he's selling access." Rivers stepped back, breath catching. "Are you saying he's part of an intel leak?" "No, I'm saying he is the leak." He looked around the empty hallway, pulse racing. "Why isn't the Bureau on this?" "They are. I'm here under deep cover. This case was never meant to come to trial like this. We were watching the network collapse internally, quietly. But when Jordan rushed this trial forward, he forced our hand. That's why your lead prosecutor stepped down. We had to pull him." "And the judge?" "He's problematic. History of leaning toward defendants like Jordan. But we're not here for him. We're here to stop a collapse from inside." Rivers glanced down at the folder again. "If I present this, won't it trigger a federal override?" Amina nodded. That's what I'm hoping. Because if it doesn't happen now, Jordan walks free. And the next leak won't be bank records, it'll be body bags. He took a breath, trying to gather his thoughts. Okay, I need to verify at least part of this. Do it quickly, she said. Call Deputy Director Reyes at Langley. Give him my code number. He'll confirm. Rivers pulled out his phone, hands trembling slightly. If this is real... It's very real, she said, eyes sharp. And if Judge Keyes tries to block it again, we'll go over him. Are you authorized to... I'm not here for authorization, she interrupted. I'm here because the court's about to make a mistake that will echo across continents. Rivers stared at her for a long beat, then looked down at the documents again. He didn't understand half of what was in there, but he understood enough to know that this wasn't about winning a case anymore. It was about stopping a war before it started. He nodded. Okay, let's burn the courtroom down. And together they turned back toward the double doors, armed not with guns, but with something far more dangerous. The truth. The courtroom buzzed with a strange kind of tension as people filed back into their seats. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long lines of light across the polished floor. Jordan Pierce sat confidently at the defense table, smoothing out the crease in his tailored pants. His lawyers were relaxed, whispering and chuckling, as though everything was under control. Judge Ronald Keyes sipped from a ceramic mug, barely hiding his boredom. Alan Rivers, the assistant district attorney, walked in holding a new folder, his steps firmer, his expression changed. He glanced toward the back row and gave the faintest nod. Amina stood slowly. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. Let's proceed. Mr. Rivers, call your next witness. Yes, Your Honor, Rivers said. The prosecution calls Special Agent Amina Clark. The room turned. There was a pause, a shared murmur, a shuffle of confusion. Jordan leaned toward his lawyer, frowning. The defense whispered urgently. The judge raised an eyebrow. Who? He asked, amused. Then his eyes caught Amina stepping forward from the back of the courtroom. Same uniform. Same notebook in her hand. This again? He scoffed. Is this a joke? We're calling janitors to the stand now. Amina kept walking. Sit down, Mom. I'm not repeating myself. She stopped just before the bench, pulled a slim black folder from her side pocket, and flipped it open. The silver CIA crest shimmered under the lights. The courtroom went dead silent. My name is Special Agent Amina Clark, she said, her voice cool and steady. I serve with the CIA's Counterintelligence Division under Section 42, Foreign Asset Interference. I am here under federal authority and have been assigned to monitor this trial and the activities of the defendant, Mr. Jordan Pierce. Gasps broke across the gallery. Several reporters in the back dropped their pens. Phones vibrated quietly in pockets as the news began to trickle in real time. Jordan went pale. What is this? His lawyer snapped. This is outrageous. She's not even on the witness list. She is now, Rivers said calmly. And her credentials have been verified through Homeland Security and the Office of Intelligence Coordination. The judge stood up, sputtering. You can't just... This is irregular, Mr. Rivers. It's necessary, Rivers replied. You'll want to hear what she has to say. Reluctantly, the judge motioned her to the witness stand. Amina took her place, raised her hand, and swore in under oath. Her voice never wavered. She began speaking with the clarity of a trained interrogator. The defense has presented forged documents tied to foreign investments, she said. But what they failed to disclose is that one of the listed shell companies, Orion Alliance Holdings, is flagged under US intelligence as a front for illegal global trafficking of classified defense technology. The gallery gasped again. Reporters scribbled furiously. Amina clicked a small remote, and a projection screen came to life. This, she continued, is a money trail traced through encrypted transfers, beginning in Dubai. moving through Zurich and ending at a disguised account owned by Mr. Pierce under the alias Howard Colton. She displayed transaction IDs, digital watermarks, intercepted email headers. The defense tried to interrupt. "Objection! This is outside the scope of—" "Overruled," Judge Keyes muttered, no longer sounding confident. Amina pressed on. She spoke of satellite surveillance, wiretap transcripts, and financial leaks that connected Jordan not just to corporate fraud, but to a failed attempt to export sensitive microchip technology tied to US drone systems. "This case is not about mismanaged funds," she said firmly. "It's about national security. The defendant is not a careless businessman. He's a deliberate conduit for hostile intelligence interests." Jordan was visibly shaking now, eyes darting from his lawyers to the gallery to the judge. His defense whispered furiously, panic now replacing arrogance. The judge leaned forward, clearly rattled. You're saying this man is a spy?" "I'm saying he's a threat," Amina replied. At that moment, her eyes drifted toward the gallery, where a young black girl, maybe 10 or 11, sat between two older women. The girl's eyes were wide, locked on Amina, as if she were watching someone walk on air. Their gazes met. Amina didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply gave a single subtle nod, as if to say, "You belong here too." The girl sat up straighter, and the courtroom, once so dismissive, sat in stunned silence. Facing the truth, they almost didn't let through the door. Jordan's breath turned shallow. Beads of sweat clung to his forehead, no longer hidden by his polished demeanor. His hands, once casually resting on the table, now gripped the edge so tightly his knuckles went white. The lawyers around him scrambled, whispers, shuffling papers, nervous glances toward the judge and each other. "This can't be admissible," one of them stammered. "It's all fabricated. This isn't even—" "Shut up," Jordan hissed under his breath. Amina remained at the witness stand, calm and composed, not a hair out of place. She reached into the folder she had brought and laid down document after document. Transaction logs, alias passports, matching digital footprints. Names that didn't appear in any court record. Until now, she read them aloud like a confession. Gerald Stross, UAE front contact. Account number 21173 matched with wire trail in Zurich Bank. Elena Koshova, Russian intermediary, known for asset laundering, met Jordan Pierce 3 times under alias Colton. Each name was a nail in the coffin. The defense offered no counter. They had no files to object with. They had no knowledge of these players because they were never supposed to see daylight. A court officer entered quietly through the side door and handed a folded paper to the bailiff. The bailiff blinked and brought it directly to the judge. Judge Keyes, still in disbelief, unfolded the paper and read it. His hands shook slightly. It was a federal warrant. Jordan Pierce, wanted for espionage, conspiracy against the United States, and attempted trafficking of classified defense infrastructure. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, camera shutters, murmurs rising like a wave crashing across every row. Reporters stood. People clutched their mouths, and a few stood stunned in place. The energy shifted so quickly it felt like gravity had flipped. Jordan's face was drained of color. "No," he whispered. "This is insane. I want a mistrial." But the bailiff was already approaching. "You don't get to want anything anymore," Amina said quietly, stepping down from the witness stand. The bailiff pulled Jordan to his feet. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Once so confident, now trembling. His eyes darted to the judge, then to Amina, who was now walking past him without flinching. Judge Keyes remained frozen, unable to speak. The man who had earlier dismissed her so casually now looked as though his gavel weighed 100 pounds. He started to reach for it, then stopped. Amina paused just a few feet from the door, turning her head slightly. "You called me a maid," she said, her voice quiet but resonant. I clean lies too. She didn't wait for a reply. She didn't need one. She stepped out into the hallway, the courtroom still shaking behind her. Jordan Pierce, the untouchable mogul, was now just another man in handcuffs, brought down not by force but by a woman the court had tried to erase. But truth, as it turns out, doesn't care about uniforms, and it never asked for permission to enter. The trial had ended, but its echo was only just beginning. Within hours, clips from the courtroom made their way to social media. Cell phone footage, shaky, grainy, but powerful, showed the moment Amina presented her CIA badge, the moment the courtroom froze, the moment the so-called Maid turned the system inside out. Hashtags trended globally within hours. #Agent Clark, #not just a maid, #truth. In uniform, news anchors dissected every detail. Editorials filled online spaces. The woman who dismantled deception, justice in disguise, and how one agent changed the narrative forever. But it was one photo that went viral. A candid shot of Amina stepping down from the stand, composed, proud, as the chaos of revelation swirled behind her. The image was shared across platforms with captions like, "The judge saw a maid, the world saw a warrior." Meanwhile, behind closed doors, a different reckoning unfolded. Judge Ronald Keyes, once protected by years of tenure and bureaucracy, found himself under federal review. Civil rights groups pulled transcripts from dozens of his past rulings. Patterns emerged. Dismissed testimonies from women of color, overruled evidence from minority attorneys, absurdly harsh sentences for black defendants. A petition demanding his resignation reached 100,000 signatures in less than 2 days. The court system he ruled over without challenge now turned cold and clinical toward him. He was no longer untouchable. He was now under scrutiny. Across town, Amina remained quiet. No press conferences, no interviews. When her superiors asked if she'd like to respond to the public interest, she declined. "Let the facts speak," she said. Back in East St. Louis, a young girl sat on her bedroom floor, crayons scattered around her. She'd been in the courtroom that day, tucked between her aunt and her big sister. She had seen Amina walk through those doors wearing a uniform like her mother's, and turn into something the world never saw coming. Her drawing was simple but powerful. A black woman in a long coat, hair pulled back, holding a glowing badge in one hand and a sword in the other. Above her head were the words, written in pink crayon. She cleaned the truth. The drawing made it online. It was printed on protest signs, turned into street murals, and posted on school bulletin boards. People began calling Amina a modern-day Rosa Parks of intelligence, someone who didn't just demand a seat, but took the whole courtroom. One major news outlet ran a headline that captured it best. "Maid? No. CIA agent breaks billion-dollar case in courtroom standoff." But Amina didn't read the articles, didn't click the links. She sat in a quiet room at Langley, debriefing her next assignment. A different case, a new lie that needed uncovering. Her posture was steady, her voice calm. She had no interest in fame. She had work to do. For Amina Clark, justice wasn't a moment, it was a mission. The seasons turned quietly after the trial, but the ripple Amina left behind never stopped moving. Months later, in a modest but brightly lit building on the south side of Chicago, a new sign hung over the entrance. The Clark Initiative for Justice, Service, and Truth. Inside, rows of folding chairs were filled with teenage girls, black, brown, quiet, curious. Some wore braids, others hijabs. Many wore hoodies. All of them wore the same look, the cautious hope of someone seeing something they'd never believed was meant for them. Amina stood before them, not in a badge, not in a suit, but in jeans and a navy blue turtleneck. She spoke not like an agent, but like a neighbor. She talked about law. She talked about service. She talked about silence. and when to break it. She didn't use her case as a weapon. She used it as an invitation. Across the walls, portraits of trailblazing women in intelligence, civil rights, and justice hung alongside a framed copy of that little girl's drawing. She cleaned the truth. It was now their emblem. The program offered scholarships, internships, and mentorship from women in law, civil service, and, yes, even intelligence. Amina had worked quietly behind the scenes to get national security agencies involved, creating a pipeline that had never existed before. But perhaps the most poetic moment came 6 months later. In the same courthouse where she had once been dismissed as just a maid, a panel was held on systemic bias and intelligence reform. Representatives from the DOJ, Homeland Security, and top law schools gathered in rows, their name tags tucked neatly into plastic sleeves. At the front sat Amina. The room was packed. Media, students, local leaders. And there, in the gallery, sat the same young girl who once looked at Amina with awe. She was front row now, holding a notebook in her lap. Amina took a breath, stepped up to the microphone, and looked around. Her eyes landed for a moment on the judge's seat, now empty, now retired, now irrelevant. She smiled gently. They asked me why I stayed quiet that day, why I didn't shout. The truth is, I didn't need to. When you carry truth, you don't need volume, just timing. She paused. The room leaned in. Power doesn't wear a suit, she said. Sometimes it wears humility and a badge hidden in a cleaning cart. The crowd rose to their feet, and somewhere in the back, unnoticed by many, a janitor nodded, smiling quietly as she swept the floor, the weight of those words still echoing through the room.